Hello students, welcome to La Excellence. Welcome to the 26th weekly magazine where we'll be covering from 20th August to 26th August 2017. And as I have already told in the previous videos as well, that we'll be focusing mostly from prelims and mains point of view, as from now on it is important from both prelims 2018 point of view and also mains 2017 point of view. And on the request of several students, we have started recording NCERT books where we'll be telling you what is important in every NCERT book, which area can be used in mains and which portions you have to remember for prelims. And most importantly, we have tried to cover entire subject with the help of the NCERTs itself. For example, when I take geography, I try to explain the basic concepts that is actually required to understand some points which are given there. So at the end of this month, we'll be releasing them. You can enroll and watch it later. So let's quickly move on to some of the issues that we need to focus in this particular week. The essay of the week is actually with respect to 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts, which talks about decentralization in Indian society after 25 years of enactment of these two acts. So it is very important for you to know about the positives and negatives of these two acts. Where has the government failed? What are the areas that we need to improve? Always remember, something of this sort, which had huge impact in Indian polity, can be asked. But what is more important for you is you have to identify the problems which were associated with this acts and what are the solutions and what are the other recommendations made by different departments or different committees to strengthen the decentralization in Indian society. To ensure that you people work on these two aspects from essay point of view, we have tried to make an essay out of this particular issue. Second important issue that we need to focus is actually with respect to cyclones, hurricanes, typhoons. Fortunately, at the same time, we are observing hurricane in United States of America and you have typhoons near China. What is left? You have Australia where you see Willy Willy, and you have Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal where cyclones will be present. Usually it is believed that during monsoonal season, whenever cyclones act, we usually consider it as part of monsoon rather than giving a specific name or terming it as a cyclone. So because of this factor, you will not observe any cyclones present in Indian Ocean or in Arabian Sea or Bay of Bengal as of now. But you might have observed Gujarat is under floods, Bihar is under floods, and if you observe, Bangalore is seeing severe rainfall. So all these are associated with monsoons according to some studies. But few people say these can be because of the low pressure areas that are developed over Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, which we see because of cyclones as well. Meteorological department has not come up with anything where they say that they are observing cyclones. So as of now, let us consider only the hurricanes which have actually affected United States of America, and at the same time, let us also focus on the typhoons which we are observing in China. The names of this is according to the International Meteorological Department, which focuses or which tries to collect names initially from different countries. Here I want you to observe one simple fact that hurricanes or typhoons, whenever they actually affect the coast, they will give sufficient warnings to the people that by the time it comes and approaches, it will be 3 to 4 days. You can see hurricane starting here at 1 p.m. Thursday, and when it went for landfall, it was almost Sunday or Saturday evening. The meaning of this is it took almost 3 to 4 days and it was foreseen. So even with 3 to 4 days of advance warning system, there was no proper facilities to evacuate the people from this particular region. So here it is very, very important for us to locate about the problems that this hurricane had actually troubled. Most importantly, you should also be aware that whenever such disasters happens, international communities come and they again start discussing about the preventive mitigation or post-disaster measures that needs to be taken to ensure that these disasters will not have huge impact on the people. After Hurricane Katrina, we actually see Sendai framework coming up. Similarly, we have to see if it has severe impact, what are the other things which the international communities will think of as disaster management policies. Then when we are actually talking about the typhoon which had actually affected the China's coast, we usually observe that it is one of the strongest one which is hit after 53 years, which has left a lot of death and destruction in the region. Especially Macau and Hong Kong is troubled a lot in this typhoon. Hato, the 13th typhoon this year, landed in the city of Zhuhai in Guangdong province, bringing gales of up to 45 meters per second. So you can imagine the speed. What is more important for us is, why are we seeing so many cyclones and floods? So in this year, we are actually observing, internationally people say that this is because of climate change, and few people say there was El Nino in last 2 years, and now we are actually observing La Nina, and La Nina has actually affected India and other parts. But when it comes to these cyclones, tropical cyclones, typhoons or hurricanes, we can say that it is mainly associated with climate change, where increasing temperature in the oceans are leading to this. The next important issue from international relations point of view is with respect to India-Nepal relationship, where we are actually talking about Nepal Prime Minister's visit to India. Nepal Prime Minister visit is very significant today, mainly because of certain factors, especially when we look at India-Bhutan relationship, Indo-China relationship, and also when we consider what are the things that has happened before the Nepal Prime Minister's visit. So when we consider all these factors, this particular trip of Nepal Prime Minister to India is very, very important for us. So let me just begin with Prime Minister Narendra Modi coming to power. As soon as he came to power, he visited Bhutan and later he came to Nepal as well. And once Prime Minister Modi came to power, there was very good relations between India and Nepal. It went to such good relationship that India had played a very important role to bring Nepal back on track when it comes to Nepal earthquake. So when they were suffering, India was first to go there, help the communities, and then also helping the Nepalis to sustain. We gave aid and we gave everything that is possible to bring Nepal back. But during the same time, there was some democratic uprisal because of the constitutional provisions which the Nepalis actually adopted. The Nepalis saw democracy in 2006, and this was also possible because of Indian help. There was an agreement between Maoists and the King of Nepal. Along with them, some political parties also came. In New Delhi, we had an agreement where all these people accepted to allow Nepal to move towards democracy. But at that point of time, one of the major problems that we actually observe is constitution framing. So when we actually consider Nepal, Nepal can be divided into two regions. One is Terai region, which is having close relations with Bihar, UP. And the another one is Pahadi region. Pahadi region. So here mountainous region and they are Pahadis. And the people who are actually present in Terai region are Madesis and also Janajatis. Fine. So these two communities are very close to India. Now, Pahadis are politically, economically stronger in Nepal. Whereas India has always supported rights of both Pahadis and also Madhesis and Janajatis. And Madhesis usually look at India for help whenever it comes to dealing with the Pahadis. Now, when the constitution was framed, initially the debate in the constitution was, should we have Nepal as a single country or should we divide Nepal into several states, so that Madhesis and other groups will also come to power. But Nepal wanted to be united and they didn't want to divide into states. On the other hand, they have made constituencies in such a way that Pahadis will be always dominant. When the constitution was adopted by the Nepalese parliament, the biggest problem was the Madhesis and Janjatis opposed it, and they also blocked entry to Indian goods. Especially if you have to send any goods to Nepal, it has to cross this Terai region. So Madhesis, they blocked it. Nepalis believed that it is not Madhesis who have blocked, but it is Indian government which has blocked Indian goods to Nepal, so that the Nepalis will listen to Madhesis. At that time, they also thought of moving closer to China, and China was also willing to construct roads and railways below Himalayas to reach to Nepal, so that their dependency on India can be reduced. But Nepal realized that it is not very easy to stabilize the economy of Nepal without India's support. And because of this, they again started developing good relations with India. After the constitutional crisis, President of Nepal came to India and now the Prime Minister is visiting. So let us see what are the areas where these two can actually cooperate. But to develop good relations, we have given some points where India and Nepal has to focus. The first major area is with respect to flood management. That is, we need to speak about flooding in the Nepal plains, which is caused by Kosi barrage. You know that Kosi is sorrow of Bihar, and if you have to control this, then you have to work more effectively with Nepal. So this is one area where India and Nepal has to come closer. And when it comes to power purchase, India has said that we will purchase electricity only from those companies or those power projects where Indian equity is more than 51%. But India has to revisit this and ensure that Nepal sells electricity to India so that its economic dependency will be more with India. And demonetization and GST has impacts in Nepal as well. The reason for this is most of the trade with Nepal or Bhutan happens with India. Whenever we put taxes or whenever we change the currency system, as they have free convertibility of their rupees in their countries, we usually observe that the monetary and financial issues are usually seen. Nepal welcomed demonetization, but at the same time they requested Indian government to send lot of money to Nepal so that they can also overcome the impact of demonetization. It is believed that in the border areas, people accept Indian rupee and trade can be done in Indian rupee in Nepal. With India and Bhutan, still recently we were talking about the Doklam standoff. Now when we are focusing upon India-Nepal, we also have to think about some of the border problems. When you are actually looking at the Kali River, especially near the western border of Nepal, you observe that whenever the river is considered as the boundary between two countries, and whenever there is shifting of this river, then there is dispute over this territory as well. So India and Nepal are fighting over the regions, especially at Susta, Kalapani, and the tri-junction of Lipu Lake. You have a tri-junction present in between India, Nepal and Tibet as well. And then what is more important is with respect to border management, we need to talk about effectively controlling fake currencies and also terrorist movements. It is believed that some terrorists were caught at the border between India and Nepal, which gives us a clear indication that if we do not control this border properly, then this border can be misused by terrorists against India. And at the same time, they also speak about the migrant rights. You should not use illegal migrants to Nepali citizens because we have open borders with respect to Nepal. SSB actually looks after the Nepal border, and Nepal and India has to take care of the migrants who are moving on either side. So with the present government's neighborhood first policy, let us see on all these areas how India and Nepal are going to coordinate. One of the major issue, especially with respect to court judgment, was with respect to triple talaq. There can be a question on this in women's issue and social issues. Please be careful. Anything can be asked with respect to this. Here, whatever you consider, you need to remember a simple fact that the Supreme Court has actually tried to overrule what is considered as one of the basic problem when it comes to diverse in Muslim community. To be frank, if you actually observe, there are three types or three forms of talaq: ahsan, hasan, and talaq-e-biddat. And most of the Muslim countries have actually banned triple talaq or instant talaq. So even Pakistan and Bangladesh, which considers themselves to be Islamic countries, have banned it. So what our Supreme Court has done is not anti-Islam, because Islam itself prohibits this. But the problem is it is practiced and followed by the people. Second most important thing that we need to observe here is it is not banning entire talaq or divorce, but it is banning only talaq-e-biddat. So that should be clear. Then we need to recollect Shaira Bano case, where the Supreme Court had told that you should respect women's rights and you should fight against polygamy and others. But the Rajiv Gandhi government at that point of time did not implement this verdict properly. Now we are expecting that this verdict will be implemented, but the biggest challenge is these are not observed by the people who are present in local areas or villages. So if in villages, if there is instant talaq or triple talaq cases, then they don't have the freedom to go to these courts. So again, implementation is an issue. But when we look at the judgment, we have to see how the judges have spoken about this. So few judges have said that it is with respect to Article 14, we need to read triple talaq. The other judges, two judges who have opposed it, have said this is followed from centuries and it actually falls under the cultural rights. So you cannot interpret with Article 14 is the question. Second important thing, if it is customary law, Supreme Courts cannot change. But this is actually under Article 13. So if it is under Article 13, then Supreme Court has the legal viability to change this. So these are some of the facts that you need to consider. We have actually given what is the statement given by the two judges and what are the justifications that they have given when it actually comes with respect to triple talaq. So just go through these judgments. UPSC will not ask you this, but whenever you are writing an essay or with respect to women's issues, the dialogue has to be between Article 25 and Article 14. So please work on these two. The next important judgment in this week was actually with respect to right to privacy. Here, Supreme Court has said that privacy is a fundamental right, but it has also said it is not an absolute right. The question in front of Supreme Court was, is right to privacy a fundamental right or not? unanimously, the Supreme Court has said that yes, it is a fundamental right. Because once if you call it a fundamental right, it becomes basic structure of the constitution. And at that point of time, the central government cannot bring any measure which will affect right to privacy of individuals. Many have certain questions with respect to can Aadhaar be considered, or if we give Aadhaar and if everything is linked to Aadhaar, does it actually affect our privacy or not? Few people go to the extent of calling this to be a draconian law. Don't use some extreme words in UPSC exam. So my point to you is, please read only till here. That is, Supreme Court has said right to privacy is a fundamental right. What about Aadhaar and other government policies? That on the basis of judgments we have to see, because courts may interpret things differently when it comes to different issues, because they have allowed Aadhaar linkages with bank accounts. They have also allowed Aadhaar linkages to some benefits. So they may also allow Aadhaar linkages to some other aspects which you may feel or which newspaper may feel to be affecting right to privacy. So please don't come into conclusion without proper judgment. One important area where many people are waiting to see the impact of right to privacy is Section 377, which actually stops or criminalizes homosexuality. Homosexual activities is considered a criminal offense according to IPC, which dates back to 1860, that is during British era. Even Britishers have changed their laws in such a way that they allow homosexuality in their country. Unfortunately, India has stuck to the British era IPC and we have not come out of it. Sometimes the judges have gone to the extent of calling this to be a physical or psychological disorder, and they have gone to the extreme of punishing some culprits or some people whom they call culprits, or some people with electric shocks and others. This is what people say. The problem is in accepting some of the things. So if right to privacy is considered as a fundamental right, then whom do I choose to do love with is also my private choice. At that time, can the state intervene and criminalize it? It cannot. So let us see how this will be seen by Supreme Court. The next important issue is actually with respect to caste and class, where we are focusing on subcategorization in OBCs. Most of the people sees it as a political opportunity by the present government to get votes. But what exactly is this? They are actually talking about categorization within the OBCs. That is, you try to categorize OBCs into backward and most backward. And more privileges will be given to most backward rather than giving it to only backward people. Today, the biggest question is, some people have been added into, or some communities have been added into OBCs, but they are economically well off and socially well off, and they are able to take lion's share when it comes to jobs and other things. But other people who are economically and socially backward are actually not benefited. So with this committee, the committee's main aim will be to submit a report where it tries to categorize the OBCs into backward and most backward, and more privileges will be given to them. So once the report comes, and if government accepts the recommendations, then we have to read about this carefully. From science and technology point of view, you should always remember that any new innovations or technology, if it is in news, then questions can be asked from those areas. When we are actually considering artificial intelligence, this is a new area which is in news, and there are controversies with respect to this. Few argue that this is an utopian idea, but few argue that within 10 years we will see its application. What exactly is artificial intelligence? You have human intelligence, another one is artificial intelligence. It is believed that whenever people talk to these computers, mobile, and whatever you give orders to them, on the basis of your orders, they will be doing the action. It may be iPhone's Siri or Microsoft's Cortana, which actually recognizes your voice, and on the basis of whatever orders you give it, they work, they search, they open particular apps, they send messages. So it is believed that over a period of time, every work can be done with the help of these artificial intelligence. And if we can connect this to robots, and if they can start reacting on the basis of whatever we order, then this can replace lot of human work. It is believed that in India and China, more than 50% of the people will lose their jobs because of this automation. Even when we talk about IT sectors, earlier when we considered testing, it was manual. Human beings were required. Now they are actually shifting to automatic testing where few people are required. So with this technological change over a period of time, we may observe mass layoffs. But few people argue that if artificial intelligence increases or automation increases, then IT sectors and other sectors will be benefited. And as India is majorly working towards these IT sectors and most of our economy is dependent on services, so we will be benefited. But the biggest challenge is we should ensure that skill development is given to most of the people so that India is in a position to reap the benefits. Most of the people argue that with developed countries seeing the last stage of Malthusian cycle where death rates have reduced and birth rates have also reduced, where we usually observe that dependent population has increased and working population has reduced, and this is forcing many countries to accept migrants from outside. And as these migrants are increasing, there are some problems associated with culture of these migrants as well. Today, we are focusing more on automation or artificial intelligence is the argument of the developed countries. So let us see how exactly this will unravel over a period of time. The next important issue which has been asked by UPSC at least thrice in the exam is with respect to WTO and most importantly, Bali package. What exactly is this? So for this, we need to understand some issues in detail with respect to WTO. Now, whenever I'm talking about WTO, I need to understand the voting pattern in WTO and other organizations. When you consider United Nations, you must be aware that United Nations has a powerful body called as Security Council, which has powerful 5 countries. And these 5 countries are US, UK, France, China and Russia. So these 5 countries have more voting powers and they also have something called as veto power, which we'll be seeing later. But these 5 countries are powerful. When we talk about IMF, in IMF, the voting is actually on the basis of money deposited in IMF. That is, when we are actually talking about voting pattern, so if there is $100 billion which is kept in IMF, we usually observe that $16 billion is of United States. So US will have 16% voting rights. $4 billion is of India. So India has 4% voting rates. So like this, based on which country has more deposits, that country will have more voting rights. Usually, if India increases to $8 billion, India's voting rights will increase. So other countries don't want to reduce their voting rights. So what they will do, everyone will double their interest or their money in IMF. Due to this, again, the voting rights will remain constant. So here what you should understand, IMF voting is actually on the basis of savings. And when it comes to WTO, every country has only one vote. And in WTO, you have three groups. One is developed countries dominated by US and its allies. Second one is developing countries or emerging economies where India, China and other countries come in. Third important is least developed countries where Bangladesh and other countries are seen. So we have three groups: developed, developing, LDCs. All these countries have only one vote each. So US also has one vote. Even least developed country also has one vote. Usually developing countries and least developed countries come together and they try to fight against the developed countries. So most of the arguments or agreements whichever developed countries want is not signed in WTO because the domination is of developing and least developed countries. Whenever it comes to patents, agriculture or taxation system, India acts as a leader for developing and also least developed countries. Many argue that NAM acts as a platform for India to unite the voice of developing and least developed countries, even though the relevance of NAM has reduced over a period of time. Today, we still accept NAM because it acts as a platform to ensure that developing countries and least developed countries' interests are safeguarded and debated. Now, in 2013, the Congress government, which was in power, wanted to go for Food Security Act. And according to this act, they actually aimed at providing rice, wheat and cereals at 3 rupees, 2 rupees and 1 rupee to almost 75% of rural population and 50% of urban population. And through this act, when we are providing food security to the people, then government has to procure more. If government has to procure more, then farmers has to produce more. When will farmers produce more? Farmers will produce more when minimum support price. In last magazine, I have explained minimum support price and procurement price. Only when minimum support price is more production of these crops will happen, and only then more procurement can be done. Only then more distribution can be done. But internationally what happens? We actually try to divide these subsidies into three groups. We call them Greenbox. For example, let me take United States of America. What US does? US will not give any subsidy or minimum support price to farmers. What it does, it says, I will give you 5,000 rupees per hectare to every farmer. And it is up to the farmer to decide what he has to grow. Government has no role to say what they have to grow and what they should not grow. And it is not distorting the trade. That is, let's take India. When we take India's case, now farmers, if Indian government do not give any minimum support price, farmers can grow anything. But if government says, I will give you 100 rupees if you grow rice, then farmers will think, why should I take risk? I will go to some products where the minimum support price is fixed. So farmers are diverting their production because of the subsidy given by the government. So those subsidies comes under amber box. Most of the Indian subsidies comes under amber box, whereas United States is not telling their farmers what they should grow. This is not diverting the trade, or this is not diverting the production in the farm. So they are under green box. If any subsidy falls under green box, then it is up to the government, or it is up to the farmers to receive as much subsidies as possible from the government. There is no restrictions on this. But if government gives any sort of trade distorting subsidies like India's, then this comes under amber box. And they say that there are rates fixed according to 1988 Act. So it should not go beyond 10% of what was agreed in 1988. 1988 is almost 30 years back. Now also if we have to follow this, then don't you think inflation and other things are to be considered? But never this debate had come to place. But now with Food Security Act, India has to procure more and India has to go for more minimum support price. When India goes for more minimum support price, it is actually violating this 10% norm. United States understood that for India, Food Security Act is important, and if it has to implement it, then it has to violate this agreement. I can take this case to WTO dispute settlement and India can be punished. India went to United States and other countries and requested them not to file any case. So they said in written, we want you to accept for trade facilitation agreement. The meaning of this is, let us take a ship coming from United States to India carrying fishes. Okay, so we know that the cost of the fishes or wheat, let me take wheat. We know that India is going to get good wheat crop in next month. But US has already sent wheat to Indian market. If wheat enters into Indian market, then the demand for wheat reduces. And Indian wheat will become costly and it will be very difficult for our farmers to get good money. So, what India will do? India will stop US ships in the name of some delays in procedures. They say this application is not proper or this document is not there. Please verify it and come back. So whenever they delay like this, usually the delay may take up to 2 to 3 months. By this time, Indian products would have come and they would have been sold as well. So after this, when the US products comes in, then they will not be in a position to compete with Indian products. Remember, if you are delaying by 2 to 3 months, then they have to pay for the ship charges and all. Most of the developed countries were affected because of this. They were requesting developing countries to go for trade facilitation agreement. According to this, everything will be computerized. And before a ship is leaving United States, it can take permission from India whether a particular ship can be loaded in India or not. What are the documents required? All this can be uploaded and permission can be taken beforehand, and this will not give any advantage to the developing countries. So this was the agreement which developed countries were accepting. And they said, if you accept trade facilitation agreement, then we will give you 4 years peace clause. That is, 4 years you can go for Food Security Act and we will not take this case to WTO. Congress government at that point of time actually agreed on this. And at this point of time, India got PDS or Food Security Act. Developed countries got trade facilitation agreement. But when it comes to least developed countries, they were very much worried. They said, you both benefited, what is the benefit for us? So India proposed that goods from least developed countries should be taxed less when compared to developing or developed countries. The meaning of this is, let us take sandals. So if sandals from India are taxed at 10%, and if sandals from US are also taxed at 10%, but for least developed countries, it should be only 5%. So the least developed countries' products will become cheaper and they will be more attractive in other countries. This is the major ambition. India tried to console them as well. 2014, Modi government came to power. They said, we don't accept with this. And they also argued that the peace clause which you are speaking is only for 4 years. But we want the peace clause until and unless this 1988 agreement is changed considerably. Initially, WTO, especially developed countries and least developing countries, were not happy. But as India was stubborn, other countries also said, yes, India is fair, that until and unless we try to have an agreement on 1988 agreement, which is called as Agreement on Agriculture, we should not file any case against them. So these were some of the major things which we learn when it comes to WTO and PDS. So Bali package, trade facilitation agreement are some of the questions which you have seen in prelims and also mains UPSC exam. You have observed lot of rail accidents in recent time. So rail safety is one of the important thing that we need to consider. And Rashtriya Rail Samraksha Kosh was announced in budget, and the fund has to be used for railway safety, preparedness and maintenance. It's very important for us to look at these, and also we need to consider sanitation, cleanliness and other aspects as well. So here, if they talk about rail safety and gaps, you need to focus on RFID technology, where this technology is used whenever two trains come and hit. But nowadays we are seeing some derailment as well. For this, you need to ensure that people who are associated with this, proper action needs to be taken, and surveillance of these areas are also required. The next important issue is with respect to economy, where we'll be focusing on bilateral investment treaties. The meaning of this is, let us take UK and India has bilateral investment treaty. According to this, we usually observe that any company from UK, if it invests in India, then the investment has to take place according to the investment treaty which India has signed with respect to UK. With United States, India may have different BIT. With Japan, India may have different BIT. So companies coming from US will be treated differently from companies coming from UK or companies coming from Japan. So with different countries, we try to have this bilateral investment treaties. Now, the biggest worry is whenever you have these investment treaties, the problem is we are focusing on investor-state dispute settlement. That is, let's take a case. Vedanta company wanted to come and invest in India. India has welcomed them, but when it comes to clearances, environmental clearance and other things, we failed to give proper clearance, or land acquisition was very difficult for that particular project. Due to this, they had some problems, or we may also say that due to this, they faced some losses. Now, who will repay this? And where will the government take this? Or whom will the private sector punish? So private sectors are asking that please give us permission to sue the government. That is, UK company can sue Indian government and Indian government has to repay the loss amount to that particular company. So until and unless these are finalized, companies are not willing to invest in the countries. This is what we call bilateral investment treaty, where India and other developing countries are not very happy with this. So the Sri Krishna committee was actually set up to study about these disputes, where the committee has recommended some of the following points. It said that the creation of the post of an international law advisor to advise the government on international legal disputes, particularly BIT disputes. So you should have some tribunals to look into these cases. And you should also have legal advisor and who will try to read international trade treaties and also bilateral investment treaties and help India to counter these companies. And you should also have interministerial committee consisting of ministries of finance, who has to coordinate with External Affairs Ministry. The reason for this is MEA will deal with that particular country. So MEA has to help the Ministry of Finance to overcome the issue, and at the same time you also need the help of legal studies or law ministry. So when all these ministries come together, then only there will be proper representation at international forums. The next important thing is with respect to possibility of establishing BIT appellate mechanism or a multilateral investment courts which will try to solve these disputes. So they are also talking about having separate money or fund to fight against these, and also they are talking about external lawyers being hired to solve these cases. And at last, we have to see one of the major recommendations of Niti Aayog. You're all aware the Planning Commission is replaced by Niti Aayog today, and when we are talking about Planning Commission being replaced by Niti Aayog, the biggest thing is what are the agendas and what is the deadline given for Niti Aayog to work? How is it different from Planning Commission? So here the Niti Aayog has come up with different strategies. One, they are actually focusing on 15-year vision, 7-year strategy and 3-year action agenda, and all these are actually functioning to ensure that a vision strategy is being prepared to work from 2017-18 to 2031-32. So what are these? It is believed that the new vision strategy and action agenda, they differ from 5-year plans by considering some of the practical problems in a globalized economy. Planning Commission was working like a socialist economy. Now with Niti Aayog, it has to work more by considering globalization, privatization and other factors as well. So it has to consider the reality and try to change things accordingly. It tries to talk about the link between the central government expenses and also high priority sectors which the government has to invest. Over a period of time, how should we expand expenditures in rural development, defense, railways, roads, education, health and other sectors. It also focuses on urbanization where we talk about smart cities and also help in moving towards Swachh Bharat. Eliminate corruption and black money, which is also major problem in Indian society and major focus of the present government. And they also focus on judicial system. They're not only focusing on environment politics, but they're also focusing on judiciary, and at last they also talk about social sector where scheduled tribes, women, scheduled caste, and also they focus on specific sectors like health and poverty. And then some of the concerns with respect to air pollution raised by Niti Aayog is with pubble burning, biomass burning, accidents, air pollution, thermal power plants, all these are leading to lot of pollution in North India, and they want to reduce this as much as possible. For this, the measures that they recommend is they are asking to switch to cleaner technologies to reduce pollution from big kilns within 3 years. They are also talking about reducing vehicular pollution by switching to electric or less pollutant vehicles. They are also talking about flue gas desulfurizers on all co-power plants so that sulfur-based chemicals will be reduced. They are also focusing on removing or shutting down power plants which are old and which emit more sulfur dioxide. They propose higher taxes on petrol and other things so that parking, petrol and vehicle taxes, if it is increased, people will not purchase this. But the problem is if this increases, then inflation or demand for these products reduces, and if automobile sectors fall, there is high possibility it will have impact on other industries related to this as well. And we are focusing on using alternative measures to burn the crops so that impact of pollutants on air and also on atmosphere will be reduced. In last magazine we spoke about black carbon. Here we need to talk about air pollution, and Niti Aayog focus on air pollution is interesting. High possibility they may ask you with respect to measures, so if you can write these measures, it's fine. So not only for mains 2017, even for mains 2018, pollution is very important, and if you can have these points, it will add value in your exam. At last, we have a case study. So please go through this case study with respect to Ganesh Mahotsav and try to answer it. So few answer scripts are not evaluated. We will be doing it as soon as possible. Thank you guys. Thanks for watching.